Hi friends, before we start this episode, I just wanted to let you know that here in From Someone Who Gets It, we have raw, vulnerable conversations, and sometimes those conversations can trigger others. I want to let you know that in this season, we touch on suicide, infertility, PTSD, and everything in between. So if those are some subjects that are triggering to you, I just want to let you know that you're heard and you're seen and you're not alone. This podcast is for you, and I hope you join us. Hi everyone, welcome to From Someone Who Gets It, a podcast about life, mental health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Marcela Pawaga, and this season I'll be sitting down with some of my favorite people having raw, vulnerable conversations about goals, dreams, life, and mental health. Every Monday you can find our episodes on the Cultura Talks channel, and I hope you join in. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to another episode of From Someone Who Gets It. I'm your host, Marcela Pawaga, and today we have a returning guest. His episode was one of my favorites last season. We had so many amazing messages that I had to ask him back for season 2. Today we're sitting down with Carlos Escanilla. I am on season 2 of From Someone Who Gets It.
There you go. Absolutely. I mean, when you are constantly busy and it's ongoing, it's amazing that, it's really weird and wild to get to a point where you can sense people watching.
Oh my gosh.
And you're
yes.
and then there's people that are just ready for you to like trip up,
yes.
say one wrong thing, do this, do that, and I guess it's the concept of haters, which is something that I've always tried to find a different term for it. But it's like you're on people's radar.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. And all you're doing is keeping busy. So speaking for me, I'm just doing what I always do. And then it's all of a sudden negative comments, we had a great show at Savage Labs at Lanyap. Then all of a sudden, I'm posting videos, and then all of a sudden there's people you playing there just devalues all musicians because they don't pay out enough, and you're just devaluing everybody's whatever. And I'm like, but we're happy with what we're getting paid. I'm just performing.
That's how.
And all of a sudden the negative starts coming in. And that's for me, it's first time. I've never, in 16, 17 years, I've never experienced that. So it's like, oh, am I doing something right? But this is one of the repercussions of that.
Yeah. And no one really talks about it in the industry, because especially in South Florida theater, it's so small that you just don't want to talk about it and then upset someone and whatever. Yeah. And, I'm very I won't mention names and all that stuff, but it's just, it's hard to be in a space where you're just doing you.
Exactly.
I promise you, and you can ask any director that has ever worked with me. I come into the space ready to go. Yeah. I do my work. I do what I'm asked, and that's it. And I don't like talking about this because I feel like people might see it as a cocky thing. But when you shine bright, people around you try to dim that light.
Absolutely.
And for the longest time, I was not ashamed, but kind of my light is very bright. Let me bring it down a notch. I should just match everybody else's energy. And one day I was like, no, why do I have to continue dimming my light because people around me can't get to my level, and not in a cocky way, in a way of vibration, in a way of energy, in a way of if I'm too much for you, match my energy.
Yeah. I mean, there's a huge psychology behind that, right? There's a saying, I don't know, there's many ways of saying it, but winners want to see you win, but what does that say about everyone else? So it's you have people that are helping you pull, they're pulling you up, but as you're doing that, there's other people that are just insecure, or they feel stuck, or they're not ready to take that chance. They're not ready to take that leap of faith that might get them to the next level. And they're just sitting there and, watching. I mean, it's, how many times did I go to Carnival on the Mile and watch the bands? And I'm like, but I can do just as good as these people. Okay, but I didn't do anything about it. It just
Right.
stayed there, it died there.
Right.
Oh, I could do it just as good. I don't know why. I don't know why they're not asking me to play it. What do you mean? They don't know you exist.
Right.
Like, you got to go do something. You got to get in people's faces. You got to
Yeah.
take those chances. You got to get ready for rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because it's that thing about a person's personality that gets them to another level, and then there's other people going, well, why do they get that? Why are they shining so bright?
Right.
It's like, well, and it is weird to talk about because it's not like we're like world famous. It's like we're like in a micro
Right.
community.
Right.
It's not. I'm like, dude, like, just put in the work. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know what to
and
tell you,
it's-
dude. Like,
It's crazy because again, the industry is so small and everybody knows each other, but it becomes this thing of like who's really out there being their authentic self and who's like putting on
Right.
like the front.
right.
It's just, it becomes challenging. It becomes a little hard. It becomes, I want to be authentic all the time, and then I'm like, okay, are you going to think X, Y, and Z of me because I speak my mind or because something happens and I'm not the person who stays quiet about it? I'm the one that's going to say, hey, I didn't really love how you spoke to me, but people don't do that as much. So I'm looked at as the bitch and not the person who just demands respect no matter what.
But then that's what's beautiful about, at least like, what I've seen and like things you've posted and you guys post, and it's just a matter of knowing who your audience is in life. And that's it. And that's that, like that's the one thing, people have come up to me and they've said some nasty things to me, and I've said, I'm like, okay, thanks for sharing, but you're not my audience.
Yeah.
They're like, what do you mean? Like, I don't live life worrying about what you think, like well, what do you mean? And who's your audience? My 2 kids and my wife. That's it. As long as they trust, love, admire, and respect me, I don't need that from anyone else. I don't, so sorry, like, but everyone's going to have an opinion, like, yeah, it's, one thing that I never knew how to get gigs. So but I had like a business background. So like, honestly, like I just go to Sunbiz and I find the names of the owners and I send them my information and my content. And then they're like, okay, this is awesome. I'll talk to this person. This is your new contact person now. And I circumvent the bookers. So then all of a sudden, oh, that's the fucking asshole that, that bypasses the bookers and he's taking my money. I'm like, I didn't know you existed. I didn't know. I don't know how to.
Right.
I didn't know how to do this. I just used my, and they're like, oh yeah, well, Carlos gets his gigs because he's friends with all the owners. Well, I'd like to think I'm good too.
Yeah. Thanks.
Like, I think I'm pretty, I could sing too. Like maybe.
No, it's crazy. It's insane. But that's the industry for you.
It is.
Thanks for being back on From Someone Who Gets It.
Thank you for having me again. This is exciting.
I know. I told you before we started that your episode first was, I loved all my episodes from season 1, but your episode was and is the episode that I still talk about the most this day.
Wow.
And it's the episode that I got the most DMs from women and men, especially when we talked about like communication and relationships and all of that. And I said, literally, I think after that episode aired, I was like, I text one of my producers and I was like, we're having him back for season 2. He was incredible.
Wow.
It was so good. So I'm so happy.
I'm honored. That really does mean a lot to me. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm really, really excited to be back. Yeah. Thank you.
Something that everybody loved is that we talked about relationships, because I guess it's not talked about enough, or people just talk about like the super happy parts of relationships, which is normal. We show people what we want to show them. But I feel like I want to dig into relationships.
Sure.
Relationships are like onions. They have different layers. There's different seasons. And I think everyone goes through the different seasons. And I think like sometimes you might think like, oh, why are we fighting so much? Or why is this season different than the last? And it's like, it's okay. Just like how you as a human go through different things in life. Your relationships goes through different things. But I think today I want to talk about conflict.
Okay.
And a couple other things, but I feel like we're going to really dive into conflict.
Sure.
Conflict in many different ways.
Sure.
Conflict in the, a stupid argument of like, close when you open the kitchen counter. I mean, what is it?
The cabinet
to get a cup. Can you please close the cabinet again?
Right.
To like financial, discussions and big fights and little fights. That's what I want to talk about today. And I think my first question is, when you're in conflict with your partner, how do you keep, we all know how you keep the respect of like, no name calling, no that, no this. But how do you handle a conflict that doesn't, it's blown up, right? This conflict is huge. You got in a fight about this whole thing. How do you sit down and talk about a conflict when you just want to like wring each other's necks? How do you, that's my first question, because I think that's my biggest thing. When Eddie and I get into our fights and he wants to talk and I'm like, I can't talk right now. Leave me alone. But he needs to talk and talk it over and be like, let's just get over it. How do you approach that?
So how do I approach that? First of all, focusing on what you should not do. And you don't want to stonewall. Okay. So at the same time though, it's okay to say, hey, I need space. However, being specific about it, not, I don't know when I'm going to be ready to talk about it, but hey, can you give me an hour to cool off? Or I promise you we are going to talk about this and resolve this, but right now is not a good moment for me. Just let me just take some space, maybe a little later tonight or whenever, relatively speaking to time, like to when the argument occurred. So the first thing is acknowledging that when things are escalated, you can't resolve conflict. So in conflict resolution, one of the things we talk about is showing empathy by first active listening, because you have to have the information first, and then empathizing, right? Because once a person's fight or flight response is ignited, they actually are unable to listen to you. You can repeat things a few times in an argument and you're like, why aren't you listening to me? I just said that. Well, in fact, because they're in a heightened state, they're actually not listening to you.
Right.
So you have to help them and yourself de-escalate. And we do that by empathizing. I always say empathy opens up the ears. I always say like, just saying, hey, we're both feeling a certain way right now. I don't like seeing you this way. I could see that perhaps you feel upset or offended or whatever it may be. Okay. And just to be clear, I want to resolve this. All right. But why don't we just take a breather? Why don't we just take a minute or however long you need, depending, right?
Right.
I always say, and of course, this is so traditional and we hear this a million times, but the goal is to not go to bed angry.
Right.
Okay, so I always recommend to couples that I work with, I go, ideally, by the time you go to bed, you're at least talking about it or you're opening up more about it, or at least saying, hey, I feel a little more alleviated and ready to talk about it, but can we address it in the morning?
Right.
Something that gives some kind of peaceful closure. So I think that would be like the first steps.
When an argument becomes the same argument over and over again, and we see that a lot, right? We see that a lot of like, it started off small and then it became a thing and now it's an argument that happens at least once a month. First of all, why is that? When you had the argument the last time, you thought, okay, this is done, like we've resolved this. Why is it coming up again? And I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but I feel like I can speak for others. When that happens, it's frustrating because you're like, why are you bringing this up again?
Yes.
Why does that happen? And how do you break that in a relationship? That pattern?
Well, it's, and I'm sorry, I'm laughing because one of the most common things that happens in highly committed romantic relationships, and what we say in the therapy world is that usually it's actually one fight. It comes out in different ways through, the cabinet, putting the toilet seat down,
Right.
whatever. But it's always one fight, and it comes from usually resentment. When we talk about relationships ending or divorce, we usually say that there's three main areas that can lead to a level of resentment so intense that it could lead to just, I don't want to be with you anymore, right? And that is the meddling of friends and family. Now, that means a lot of things.
Right.
Because when I say that, people think that it's literally your in-laws knocking at your door
No.
It's not. It's how much of the influence of friends and family you are bringing into the relationship, and in turn discrediting or devaluing your ability as a couple to handle something.
Yeah.
The example I always use is, the going to lease a car or buy a car, right? And you have the paperwork in front of you, you have the interest rate, you have everything in front of you. And one of the two people in the couple goes, my dad's really good at this. Let me call him and just ask him, or you're making a decision about remodeling a house and, I'm going to call my mom to see, because now you're devaluing what you guys are capable of doing as a couple. And you know what? You make the wrong decision and you pay a little more interest on that car. You made a mistake together as a couple. And then as a couple, you decide to never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
So the meddling of friends and family is a lot of things. And that's just one example that I used, or a few examples that I used. But it's a lot of things. There's a lot of ways. And it's not, and the friends and family are not always the perpetrators. It's how we allow the people in our lives to influence our relationship.
Right.
Unknowingly. All of this is happening. And again, I think I said this in the last episode. We don't wake up in the morning wanting to hurt our significant other in the relationship. So all of this is happening a lot of times in a very innocent way. There's no insight to this behavior. We don't realize we're doing it. Right. So that's number one. The second thing is finances. And it's not,
oh my gosh.
And it's not the amount of money. It is the financial concepts, disciplines, goals. And we all have different experiences. Some of us grew up with an abundance mindset.
Right.
Some of us, and I hate to generalize, but I grew up in Miami. I'm immigrant from Chile, and a lot of us grew up in a scarcity mindset.
Yep.
That any meal can be your last meal. We don't know where our next meal is coming from. So that influences our financial behavior as adults, and we get anxiety.
Oh my God.
In different ways through that. And when a couple doesn't discuss it or meet halfway on that and understand how they grew up with relation to finances, and they don't understand how that made them feel and perceive the world, and you're not understanding each other, then that can create great resentment.
Talking about finances, I grew up a single mom. She is amazing, did everything she could, but I also grew up very aware that money was very hard to get, and that we had what we needed. And even though it was really hard, she always made sure that we had everything. So even though I was aware that money was something that we struggled with, I also was aware that, thank God, we had everything that we needed. But as I got older, it developed this money anxiety. I'm an artist, which is even better for me. And there are some seasons that are great, and there's some seasons that I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I'm with someone who, even though didn't grow up with money, doesn't have money anxiety, doesn't understand the anxiety that comes from it. So I feel like one of our biggest challenges is financials. He loves to talk finances. He loves to talk about it. I don't. I hate talking about finances. It makes me super uncomfortable.
Really?
It gives me so much anxiety. I don't know if it's a thing that I just haven't worked on and I need to work on it.
Sure.
But it's like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong if I'm spending money on something, or if I'm like, for the wedding, for example, the other day I cried a lot because I was like, oh, and I'm spending money on this and that and this and that. And I'm like, but it's okay. Like you're allowed to, you deserve to celebrate. So I'm like rambling, but financials, you don't realize that when you become long-term partners with someone, it's something that is talked about a lot. So I guess a question for me and for whoever else is out there who one person struggles with financial anxiety and the other one doesn't, how do you meet in the middle? Because I guess I become very defensive about it and he's just like, money is money. It comes and goes.
And so it's the answer to the first item of meddling in friends and family, and the second item now with finances, is at the end of the day, it's not so much about the what it is, but the how we're going to do this together. And in both, when you're referring to the first example, when you're like, you know what, I'm going to check with my dad to make sure this is, a good deal. In the second example, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. I'm the one with money anxiety in my marriage. So, so I totally relate.
Yeah.
All right. And, so we want to withdraw. Like, I don't want to look at the numbers, but see, in both scenarios, somebody's left stranded, somebody's left behind. So you're not in the trenches together anymore.
Right.
You're not in it together anymore. Even if referring to the first example, even if dad says, awful deal, get me on the phone with the finance guy, gets you a tremendously better deal, somebody feels diminished in the relationship when you go home with that car. Okay. So at the end of the day, it's about how you make each other feel. Like, my wife tells me, you don't have to worry about money because as long as we're in it together, we're always going to be fine.
Right.
And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And yes, we will talk about details, and we'll talk about what your spending habits are, what my spending habits are, and we will discuss how and when and what are the limits, and because we don't want to purposely blow up our financial life either, right? So, but there will be parameters, but we're in it together.
Yeah.
You're not alone. Which I think, in my case, if I may disclose, in my case, that was a lot of it. I've always kind of been on my own,
right.
Only child. My parents, they did the best they could, but not a resource for me in that sense financially. So, I always have that fear of one wrong move, and 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, I'm living under a bridge.
Right. Oh my gosh.
It's like all the people we know,
right.
all the talents we have,
right.
the abilities we have, but somehow that's not going to matter in that moment. You just live under a bridge now, and you lost it all. And it's like, and those racing thoughts can eat away not only at us, but our partner.
Yeah.
Like that, they have to deal with that irrational fear as well.
Yeah.
Because it affects your behavior. Then, of course, it affects how we react to our partner. And then it affects how we talk about money. And, and if you're having a sit down with your partner talking about finances and you're anxious already, your partner's going, I can't have this conversation with you because...
Which is what we were supposed to sit down and just talk about, finances for the year.
Sure.
It was just let's sit down, talk about budget. And I don't know why my brain hears budget and it goes into this high defense thing, and it's gonna be like, oh, okay, but are you gonna judge me because I spent this much money? Because
budget is a limiter.
Yeah.
So and if we know that we have a tendency to spend, we're like, I don't want you to know.
Right. And I think, and Eddie and I have touched upon this, but I suffer with ADD and OCD and depression, the list goes on and on. And one of my big dopamine hits is buying stuff. I don't know what it is of the buying it can be anything. It'd be going to the gas station and getting a Red Bull, or going online and buying a dress. The act of buying something is a dopamine hit. And I would spend money, my own money, like it was fine, like I was working, whatever. But then if he wants to talk about it, there is this guilt inside of like, well, I should have not spent that money because we have this coming up and we have this coming up. So anytime he wants to talk about it, I'm just like, oh my God, please don't ask me what I spent money on, because now I have to like explain it to you. And like, I don't.
And the ironic thing is that he's the one that's like, well, money comes and goes.
Right.
So one would think, right, that, and right, nothing's linear, but one would think that he's the one person that you'd be like, oh yeah, I just, I buy, 15 Red Bulls a month. I mean, like, so it's about knowing that you're doing something together, right? So meddling of friends and family and the finances, yes, it has to be all together. And it's interesting because the whole psychology, and there's a great book, The Psychology of Money, great book. But and this is not from the book, but just I read it and it's really good. But separate from that, the psychology of purchasing power, when you come from a scarcity mindset and there is the dopamine hit is I'm buying this because I can.
Yeah.
And it's empowering. With having a mentality or an association with money that is not empowering. So I'm doing this because I can, and it feels good that I can do it. But then the scarcity mindset comes back later, and it's like, oh, now I'm short here. Now, should I have not, and that. So it's something definitely to work on, definitely to surpass. But I think when it comes to relationships and conflict, I think that as long as while you're in the conflict or at some point in the conflict or as you're coming to a resolution, hey, by the way, we're on the same team. Hey, by the way, we're in this together. Like, I'm not going to let you fail.
Right.
If we fail, it's because we did something wrong, a misstep, which happens with so many couples.
Right.
We're not always going to get it right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's part of the journey. It would be boring if you made every right decision and everything just came easy. It's amazing. I think the amount of time that I've been with my wife, it's going to be 11 years now, March 1st. Yeah. And the things that we used to stress about that now are not stressors anymore, and now, the kids, my oldest is 18 now.
Wow.
My youngest is 16, and like now having more time to like, connect more with each other. And it's interesting how I'm so glad we made those mistakes. I'm so glad we made that bad decision here, because now, and it's the, the cycle of life. Because now, my kids might not, when they're with a partner, but maybe individually, they'll, hey, is this a good deal? Is that, hey, we've made this mistake before. I wouldn't recommend that. Do what you want, make your own mistakes, but we wouldn't recommend that because we've made that mistake before. So that's the hard part to see when you're planning something or you're about to spend a lot of money on something or a rebuild, a renovation, a wedding, it's hard to see that, hey, it's okay if we make a mistake as long as we make it together and we're going to learn from it. And that's part of being on this team, right? So yeah. And then the other area, the third one, is intimacy. Intimacy in the form of communication, vulnerability, and a lot, some of the stuff we talked about in the last episode. Obviously sex is, a very, very, very important factor. And like one of my very good friends' fathers said one time, foreplay begins in the morning. And it's with all the little details, communications, acts, you can go by the love languages if you want.
Right.
And little things that we do throughout the day, that, so when you lack communication or you lack effectiveness in the meddling of friends and family, financial language, financial psychology, and intimacy, then resentment builds, conflicts arise, and going back, if I may circle back to the original question, yes, it's why always the same fight, or why are we always fighting about this one? Usually there's an underlying factor there. There's a resentment there. Are you feeling unheard? If we go by Brene, I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. if we go by primary emotions versus secondary emotions.
Okay.
Right? So secondary emotions are the ones that you see on a chart with the kids making different faces, right?
Right.
Angry, sad, joyful, happy, worried, right? Those are secondary emotions, but they come from a primary emotion.
Right.
And when we talk about assertive communication, we start with I feel statements in a conflict, right? And the reason, I don't know if you know this already or not, but the reason we don't address a conflict starting with the word you, Y-O-U, is because when you say you do something, our oppositional brain turns on and we immediately become defensive, and then things automatically escalate. So that's why we always recommend, to say, well, listen, I feel, and now we get to the primary emotions. I feel unseen. I feel unheard, right? I feel devalued. I feel invisible. I feel diminished. I feel, I felt diminished when you felt you needed to call your dad to see if we were making the right decision about this car purchase.
Yeah.
I felt unimportant, and that made me sad, secondary emotion.
Right.
Right. And usually when the same fight occurs or the frequency of fighting is the same, there's a primary emotion somewhere there that someone's feeling that they're not saying. I'm feeling a certain way around you, and maybe I haven't detected it, so I don't know what to say.
Right.
Or I just haven't wanted to say it because I've been wanting to avoid the conflict or avoid the conversation. But resentment it kills relationships. Resentment kills relationships. And it's really difficult because there's a lot of people who avoid conflict now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're handling conflict. Handling conflict, we're doing better. I'm not sure if we're addressing conflict in a timely manner compared to maybe previous generations.
Yeah.
I think we may be holding on to things longer, and resentment may be building. And I think something has happened. I don't know what to blame it on. The low hanging fruit is technology, and we've had the option to hide behind a screen and not have to face conflict, and it's so easy to just ignore a text or so. But those conflicts are necessary, but you have to address it and not let it.
Well, I was
build.
someone who avoided conflict. I was with someone for 7 years, and he was my first relationship. I come from divorced parents, so I didn't know the rights or wrongs in relationships. Yes, I saw my uncles with my aunts and all that stuff, but I didn't know, this is not how it should be and this is how it should be. Right. And I remember I spent 7 years walking on eggshells of he would say something that I didn't like. I just wouldn't say anything about it because I'd rather just not get in a fight because if I get in a fight, what if we break? It was this toxic circle. And then I'm with my fiance, and if there is one thing, and we've always been super transparent about that, of something bothers you, just say it. Please just let me know. Right. And that's how it's been in the beginning. And it's gotten to the point that if it's anything, and it's not anything something stupid, but it's if something bothered me in a way that I just didn't like it, I'm hey, this happened and I didn't really like it. Sometimes it's great and we communicate it, and sometimes it's oh my God, but I didn't mean it like that. How do you not become defensive? Because I find that that's my issue. But I find when I talk to girlfriends of mine, or even him, sometimes I'm defensive and he's fine. Sometimes he's super defensive and I'm fine. I think it also depends on where we're at,
Sure, yeah.
with ourselves has a really big thing. But how do you stop yourself from saying, hey, don't be defensive about this, just approach it? If they said it, for example, if Eddie and I get into a thing, his way of going into it is oh, you seem annoyed. And I hate when he points out like, or if I'm angry or if I'm annoyed or what, like, I hate it. I hate it. I think one, because I already know I'm feeling like that and I don't want to feel like this. I want to feel neutral and fine.
Sure.
So when you like call me out on it, I'm just like, okay, you didn't think I knew that I was annoyed? So my defensiveness is to be like a bitch and be like, no, I'm not annoyed. I'm just whatever. And shut down and I don't want to talk about it. We always end up talking about it. And I tell him, hey, don't call me out on my emotion because it doesn't make me, like, you think you're helping me calling me out on my emotion and you're not.
Right.
So that's two questions in one of like, how do you not become defensive when it is about you? You know what I mean? That's the hardest thing.
Yeah. But, you know, like, and remember what I said in the last episode, you know, in couples therapy, neither person is a patient. The relationship is the patient.
Ooh.
Okay.
Carlos is
So-
always dropping like these like amazing like little.
And if we can get in a mindset that it's not about you, or it is about you in the moment, whether it is or it isn't, either way, it's ultimately about the relationship. So in this case, and thank you so much, you know, for being so transparent about your experiences, and thank you, Eddie, for being okay with it. We're out there.
Yeah, sorry, babe. You know, but it is what it is.
No, but you know, and I'll definitely share one of my stories, you know, at some point.
I think it's important.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, what I was gonna say actually, is we should all give ourselves some grace, and we have to understand that the goal is 80-20. There's 20% of the time that we are going to be the worst version of ourselves. There's going to be 20% of the time that we're not going to want to listen. Our inner child is going to come out. We're going to throw a temper tantrum. We are not looking for 100% score here. That would be irrational. All right. So couples out there, give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
80-20. We're looking for 80-20.
I love that.
And, you know, I had a 20% today. I acted like a freaking child. I am so sorry, you know, and it's, you know, it's really fascinating because, you know, like even nights when maybe, you know, we party too hard and, you know, I wake up the next morning, I'm like, that was a 20% night. I did not. Nope. That was not good.
Not good.
I shouldn't have said that to that one person. Whoops.
Yeah.
Okay. Apology tour. and we're moving on.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So the, so start off with giving yourself some grace, right? And at the end of the day, it really is making a decision in that moment of, if I'm not in the 20% and I choose 80%, then I'm going to make this about the relationship. You know, he's trying to tell you something. He's trying to say, you know, I don't know, I'm not putting words in his mouth, but for example, you know, I might say with my wife, I would say, I just feel a little uneasy because you seem annoyed.
Right. And that's exactly what he means.
Right.
Yeah.
And even then, said like that, you know, because I fail more than 20% of the time on that area. But anyway, but even if said like that, it's still going to be annoying.
Right.
There's still something being said about you that you feel you need to say. And that's the ego, right?
Yep.
You know, and unless you're being flat out gaslighted. Like if somebody's like, hey, you're being sensitive, then I immediately say, I'll let you know when I'm being sensitive. Thank you very much. Moving on, right? Oh, you're upset. No, I'll let you know when I'm upset. Trust me, I think you'll know. If you think I'm upset now, this is not upset. Right? Like, you know, but you'll know and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to. So unless like it's in one of those toxic situations, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about you know, something relationships go through, two people. You know, one person's kind of like anxious, like, I don't know how to address this.
Right.
Hey, you seem upset. Okay, you don't like hearing that. That's the ego, right? Of course, yes. It's a group project, not group. I shouldn't say that. It's a team project. It's two people, right? For the most part, I guess, depending on the type of relationship you're in. And, you know, it's like, okay, wait a minute. How do I make this about the relationship and not me? That's hard in the moment.
It is.
It's very difficult in the moment, especially when you're ignited and you're just like, you feel annoyed, and
And
you're like,
something that people don't talk about is that inner child that comes out.
oh yeah,
And I feel like that inner child comes out because you are with your most vulnerable person. There's a person that knows everything about you. Who else does your inner child come out with? Your parents. You know what I mean? Who can you throw tantrums with? You're
exactly.
So I do find that that sometimes things that I get angry about, I'm not really angry about it. It's more of like an inner child trigger thing that's coming out that's making me feel like, oh, that happened. And I'll tell him like, hey, I'm not mad at you, but someone in my life used to talk to me like that, and that triggers that. And sometimes I can talk about it.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes that I'm just like, okay, I the ego like gets it, and when he says that, I'm just like, no, I'm not annoyed, but actually now I'm annoyed because and it's like, no, you were annoyed, but you weren't annoyed at him. But the way you just said that of like, look at it as the relationship rather than a personal thing, just like blew my mind now. Because now you can look at it, it's like, okay, he's probably asking me this because he's feeling this and he wants to resolve it. I've told him I don't like the way he says it, but it's the only way he knows how to communicate.
Right.
And he says it all the time. It's so funny. Sorry, babe, that I'm putting everything out there, but this is a pod where real shit is talked about. And he'll tell me all the time, I have to find a way how to talk to you. Because I think because I'm so emotional and feel everything, things that he says triggers me, and then I shut down and I don't want to talk about anything.
That is one way. And that's one option. And
I hate it. Well, I hate it because then what happens is he leaves to do something and I get my phone and then
no.
I've talked about this. We've talked about this before, but I do the whole text message thing.
Oh, I see.
Because when my emotions are so overload, I can't articulate myself.
So you need to take space.
I can articulate myself through text perfectly.
Right.
And I don't know if it is an ego thing now that we're really talking about it, that it's just sitting down and having to admit if I did something wrong or something that I did hurt you takes a really big stab at me. So if I have to talk about it vocally, it hurts more than if I have to do it through a text. He hates that. And I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's the beauty of building the building a relationship and building the communication in a relationship. It's an ongoing thing because we go changing. We are different people every 5 to 7 years. The fascinating thing about marriage is, at the core, the person is the same person. But if you have a long-lasting, loving marriage, by the end of the day, you've experienced 4 or 5 versions of this person.
That's true.
And we have to be able to adjust, right? And so it's the tools that we learn and that help us adjust. And that is, for example, saying, okay, well, also, I need to know how to ask you something because I feel uneasy about something. So how would you like me to address this when I'm feeling a certain way? But it's difficult in the moment. But that's why the mind shift, reframing is an exercise. Reframing our thoughts is an exercise. It's not something you do once and you go, whew, okay, that was a close call. I reframed. It's something that you have to do all the time. Happiness is measured by the literal amount of time it takes you to bounce back to a happy place from a not so happy place, right? That's the metric to happiness. It's the amount of time you can bounce back. And that applies to other areas of your life. The quicker you can bounce back from a fight and resolve an issue, all right, the more you're realizing, wow, we are really effective. So it's not about avoiding a fight. It's not that you're never going to fight. Right. It's about how well you manage it, just like how well you manage anxiety, how, frequency, duration, and intensity is a measure, right? How frequent am I feeling anxious?
Yeah.
How long are the symptoms lasting for? At what intensity? And then you go kind of measuring. Same thing with arguments. Oh, okay, well, arguments are going to happen, but you know what? I resented you for a day last time, and now it only lasted 1 hour. I resented you. We were back
Right.
to normal. So it's you're the fun is building this. And I
Right.
think embracing that this is a fun part of the relationship really helps. Like, wow, I didn't know that about you. Or, hey, sometimes I have no way, I know you're feeling a certain way, and I have no way of addressing it with you without you getting upset.
Yeah.
So I just want, some guidance would help. And then, of course, sometimes I might just have to say, hey, I know you get upset when I tell you this, but I need to get something off my chest. And going back to the reframing is an exercise. So there's got to be intention, just how we start any exercise routine, any habit. Reframing is one of those things where I need to interrupt the thought. I need to become the main character of my thought process.
Yeah.
Something happens and we have an automatic thought, and therefore we go straight to the reaction.
Right.
But that reaction most likely is going to be your inner child coming out. But if we become the main character of our thought process and we choose to negotiate with this thought, right? And now we say, you know what? This is about the relationship. This is not about, yes, how I'm feeling is involved.
Right.
But what can I do to benefit the relationship right now? Because that's the main character. Getting into the practice of, until it becomes a fabric of your life, it happens automatic.
Yeah.
But until then, you have to recruit that thought. You have to say,
Right.
oh, wait a minute. Okay, what would be best for the relationship right now? And you'll fail 20% of the time. And there's going to be the 80% of the time where it's like, wow, that we did that and it worked. And nothing is perfect.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's beautiful.
And it's, I love that you said that communication changes through time and through what you're going through and what you're not. Because I did see that I was like, this was a while back ago. I thought, wow, the way that we're communicating is a little different. And it took me a second to see all the stuff that was going on, like in our lives, that were very heavy. So we were communicating heavy. We got back to our normal place. But for a while, I thought, are we okay? Like, why is this happening? When you're so secure with a person, I feel like you can go through those different communication seasons and you're okay, because it's like, you and I are going to be fine. And he always tells me that every time we get in a fight, mid-fight, he's like, I love you. We're going to be okay. But I got to figure. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think it took him a while to realize I've gotten better, but I had this like attachment anxiety.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
I just was very like, oh, if we're going to get a fight, something's going to happen and I'm going to lose. Like
anxious attachment.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got over it very quickly because I realized, oh, this is my person. He's not going anywhere just because him and I get into an argument. Like, we're going to be okay. But he, I guess, realized throughout the years of like, I have to just communicate this with her because then she knows like we're fine. And it even goes down to like, if we're in an argument, he'll tell me, this really has nothing to do with you. We're okay. I'm sorry that we're in a thing. So he's very, very good at like, I love you. Yes, this annoyed the crap out of me. We're going to be okay. We'll figure it out.
Kudos to him.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
No.
I love that. I love that. Yes.
My communication has really gotten better because of him.
I love that. I find that that's amazing. As someone who has had to process major abandonment issues.
Right.
We enter relationships, or we navigate relationships with, going back to like the spending, like it's not so much of what you spent. It's like, is this person going to leave me when they find out how much I spent on Red Bull? Like it's, it can get to that point. I'm not saying that's what you were thinking, but I'm saying, running with the example, it could be it could be the smallest thing. And you're like, I'm like, oh no, is this the day that she leaves me? Is this the day she realizes? And then we end up walking on eggshells that weren't even there to begin with. It's like we set up our own eggshells and are walking, it's all in our minds, because that attachment style can be varied, and it brings out all these other things, because it brings out, well, if you're gonna leave me, then I'm just gonna get angry, and the person's like, I never said, like, what do you,
Right. What are you
what?
talking?
Yeah, so I'm already angry about it. It's like,
Yeah.
things happen, and processing that and being with somebody. And my wife Lauren has taken this almost the exact same approach.
Yeah.
We'll be in the middle of a heavy discussion or an argument, and she goes, remember, I love you. I love you, okay? Like, this is just, but I love you. And I'm like, oh, that works.
Mine is,
Yeah,
we're on the same team.
we're on the same team. That's good too.
Hey, I'm on your team. I'm on your side. Like, that's like my way of saying, like, it's okay. Like, I'm not here to fight with you. Like, we'll get over it.
Yeah.
But communication for me in all aspects, communication with my family. Like, it was very hard because I was always on the defense of like, I always thought I was doing something wrong. I always thought that it was my fault. It was always that anxiety.
Yeah.
And it comes from, I think, my anxiety as a child, of like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble because I didn't do good in school. Or I'm going to get in trouble because I talked back. Or I'm going to get, like, it was always this like thing. And that's why I'm marrying the man, that very fortunate that even in our heaviest fights and arguments, it's always been a like, I love you. I need a second. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is that, oh my gosh, there's certain fights where, I mean, they destroy you.
Yeah.
Fights the kind of fight that I've gone out and like sat by my car, like not even in the car, but just like,
Yeah.
just sat by my car
Yeah.
and just feeling completely hopeless.
And
But then you're like, no, but this is part of the journey. If you embrace that, because what ends up happening is some people, they end up getting angry that they felt that way. And now it's a downward spiral. Now we're on the path to separation. Now we're on the path to divorce. Now, now I'm angry at you. Now I'm resentful. So it's like, wait a minute, but no, like one of the most common tools or mechanisms that we use in couples therapy is, there's something that brought you guys together.
Right.
Remember that. Remember there was a time that you couldn't wait to see each other. Remember that. And cynics will say, well, of course, at the beginning, it's so easy. Yeah, but there was something that brought these two people together. And all else fails, go back to that.
Right.
Hey, what brought you, like, what brought me to you? What do you remember? What's the best memory of the first year of the relationship? And completely boop the whole situation. Yes, I'm pissed at you right now, but I'm just wondering, what's the most fond memory that you have of me? And just completely derail the argument, just to de-escalate a little bit, in case the empathy doesn't work, right? Because we have active listening, empathy, and then clarification. Fun fact, most conflicts never get resolved because it never reaches the clarification stage. And that is the one area that we need to say, hey, these were my motives. These were my intentions. Like,
yeah,
I could see that you're sad about this. I personally don't like feeling sad. So, I hate it that you're sad. But just to be clear, it wasn't my intention to do that.
Right.
My intention was this, and that. So getting to that point of, clarification is very important.
When Eddie and I first started, we did two things. If one of us would say something and the other one didn't really take it that great, he would say to me, what did you hear?
That's a great question.
Like, what did you hear? Because this is what I said, but what did you hear that I said?
Right.
And it's something that we still use to this day. He'll say something to me and I'll respond. No, but what did you hear? Because I didn't say that, but you're hearing it.
Hey, for the listeners, take note on that, because that works. That is really, really useful and good.
It's so useful because it's true. Someone can say something to you and my brain totally took it a different way.
Yeah, you already made an assumption. You already made a decision on what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was one. And the second one was, are you feeling this way or am I projecting this on you?
Oh. That's okay.
And that was one of our main foundations for when we started. So if he felt something from me, he would say, "Hey, I'm feeling this energy. Is that you, or am I projecting that energy on you?" And I would be honest. "Hey, no, you're totally projecting. I'm totally great." Or, "Yeah, you are feeling that." And that is something that we go back to. Even the other day, I said something to him, and he's like, "Oh, are you're annoyed, whatever." And I said, "Hey, you're projecting. I am great today. I feel good. I don't have anxiety. There's nothing wrong with me. That you're feeling is all coming from you. And if you want to sit and talk about it, let's sit and talk about it. But I am good. We are good." Like, and vice versa. Yesterday he was feeling some type of way, and he grabbed me. He's like, "Just so you know, what I'm feeling right now has nothing to do with you. You and I are good. We're fine. Has everything to do with the outside world. Thank you."
Yeah.
But as someone who needs validation like that, of like, "Oh, you're not mad at me," which I'm trying to work on. Sometimes we don't need validation all the time, but he's realized like, "Hey, that's her way of communicating. Hey, we're good. I am, this way you're feeling is totally me. Has nothing to do with you."
Man.
Yeah.
If you can do that 80% of the time, you're
listen,
golden.
we're not perfect.
No one is.
We're not. And we have some fights, and I'm just like, that was so stupid. Like, what was the point of that? The point of that was that I woke up and I said, "Today te quedo joder." Like that's what that was.
I've had moments where I'm just like, "Oh today, my God, this is so funny." Like, today
I was like, you know what? Like the stupidest, I'm gonna, people are gonna tell me I'm toxic and crazy, but it is what it is, whatever. No. Today he was meditating, you guys, meditating, el pobre, like had his sleeping mask on, listening to his affirmations. I walk in, I was like, "Okay, I'm leaving," whatever. He's like saying bye. And I'm like, "Hey, just a checklist of like wedding things that are your list that you need." "Oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. Okay." I don't know why. I was like, "And make sure you don't write your vows on Chat GPT." He goes, "First of all, who even said I was gonna do that?" And I was like, "No, I started this fight."
That's great.
For no reason.
Okay.
Left the room pissed.
Right. As if it already happened.
Go to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, "You're psychotic, girl." Like, Ebore was like meditating, listening to his affirmations. So I walked back into the room and I give him a kiss. He's like, "You gonna be nice now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm super sorry." He's like, "It's okay, thank you." But I think we can get there because of how strong our communication is.
I mean, you're about to get married. You're under a lot of stress.
Yeah.
We have no idea how we're going to react to the most random thing. I mean, there have been times of stress where I go to like my medicine cabinet and like take something out, and the thing in front of it falls to the floor, and I just like lose it. Lauren's like, "Yeah, for that?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. That was stupid. I'm sorry." Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's there's a lot of, I ran the Miami half marathon.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I ran it last Sunday, and Lauren came to see me on mile 11.
Aww.
Yeah. And it's the fourth time I do it. I had never had like someone go cheer me on, and she made a sign and everything. And it was just one of those moments in a marriage that the person has to make a decision. Do I enable or do I encourage? And so my hamstring was giving me trouble. The goal I had was already shot, and I'm on mile 11, and it's right under the Metro Mover. And I stopped. Most people just run by their cheering section. Hey.
Yeah.
I like stopped and like went and talked to her, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm not meeting my goal. It doesn't matter." I'm like, and then I looked at the Metro Mover, and she's like, "Do you want to go home?" And I was like, "You know what? I finished this before. I think I want to go home, And she goes, "Okay." And then she was like, and then something clicked in her, and she's like, but you're 2 miles away. Come on. Like, come on. And I was like, "But you just said that." She's like, "You can do whatever you want. Just saying, 2 miles. You've already invested 11. And I was like, I love you, but I hate you right now. And I just, and I finished. And I think that the point of sharing that story is that those moments of, I don't know if to enable, encourage, sometimes we're going to make the right decision. Sometimes we're not going to make the right decision, but it's part of the experience.
Yeah.
It's all part of the experience. Because no matter if I would have chosen to take the Metro Mover, okay, we chalk that up as a loss. That was wrong. I shouldn't have enabled that.
Right.
But you get to look back on that. And it's just hard to explain. It's just one of those things in life where you have to be in it to understand it.
No, 100%.
And so we were left with no choice but to trust the process. And all of it counts. All of it is for something. Every argument, you learn something. And these are all things that, I'm kind of generalizing at this point, and things you could probably read up on Instagram. But the point is that it is beautiful. And acknowledging that you can fail 20% of the time, and that's going to happen, guaranteed.
Right.
And giving yourself some grace and just focusing on the fact that it's not about you, it's about the relationship. All those concepts, those fundamental things that start seeping into your brain, it starts creating in an organic way behaviors that tailor that. And that's what we want.
Right.
That's what we want. We want our reactions and our actions to come from that place that we've instilled through the practice of reminding ourselves of that. Stepping out of self. And it's interesting because you partake and decide to be in a relationship. You decided to be in a relationship.
Right.
You chose to be in a relationship. So you gotta accept the things that come with it. And yes, self-care, working on yourself, your self-worth, your self-esteem, your individuality. All those things are important. We don't lose those things.
Right.
But you are part of this beautiful thing that you need to look at it as an entity and treat it with the utmost respect and really give it your all.
Yeah, and respect, I think, is another important thing. We've been together for 5 years. Never in a fight that we've had have we ever cursed each other out, called each other names, like never. Because I feel like once you pass that point, there's a loss of respect. There's like, so I can be as angry as I am. I will never, ever call him a name. He'll never call me a name. Like, we'll never, ever pass that boundary. And I think that's so, it's hard in the moment because you're a human and you want to say all these like things. But the truth is, words are very powerful. And you say something that you didn't mean, but now that, and the 4 agreements, be impeccable with your words, now that stays with that person. So we've never ever said to each other like, hey, you can't call me names. It's just always been this very like, hey, if things ever escalate to a point that we think we're going to reach there, we need to step back and figure out why we're even getting there in the first place.
I mean, controversial statement, but what you just described and the name calling, yelling, insulting, it's almost an equal lack of respect than it is with infidelity. Trust, love, admiration, and respect. In that order. All right? Can you truly love somebody you don't trust? Can you truly love somebody that you don't admire? Right? Can you admire somebody you don't respect?
Wow.
So trust, love, admiration, and respect. So if respect is at the bottom and you have those scenarios, infidelity, insults, things like that, you're back at the bottom.
Yeah.
That person feels that you don't admire them, that you don't love them, you don't trust them, and you don't trust them back. So it's like it's a huge regression in a relationship.
Yeah.
Tremendous regression. I've had couples bounce back from infidelity more frequently than couples who have had to try to bounce back over something they said to each other. And that is wild. That's one of the wild experiences as being a therapist is going home and saying, wait a minute, they can't get past these words that were said, but they can get past the infidelity?
Yeah, that's crazy.
So just a little bit of information.
No,
little thing there.
It's true. I know someone who the way that they speak to their husband, I could like never. I could never. And it's just like, no matter how mad I am, I can never look at, because you're my person. We're on the same team.
Correct. Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna tell my teammate like all these nasty things, and then I have to go play on the field with them. Like,
Right. Exactly.
what am I thinking?
I like that sports reference.
Yeah. It's so that is something that was always very important. You mentioned we talked about intimacy a little bit.
Sure.
And you said that quote of foreplay
begins in the morning.
I saw a video once, and after I saw that video, I was like, holy crap. I think intimacy is not something that a lot of people talk about. I didn't grow up talking about sex. It was never, my mom never had the talk with me. Like, so I only would speak with intimate stuff with my partner, never like out loud. So I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm talking about this subject.
Good.
But now I lost my train of thought. But I saw I saw the video, and the girl was like, my husband came home today and wanted to have sex, and I told him no because I don't work like that. And then she goes, I had to sit him down and explain to him, like, it's easy for you. Like, you can come home and probably have sex and you're fine. But I want to sit down and talk about your day. And I want to talk about, you asked me about like, it's not just in the bedroom. Intimacy should be everywhere. And I saw that video and I was like, oh my God, no one really talks about that. And then you said that quote and I was like, yep, it's so true.
It is true, but there is a caveat.
Okay, tell me.
And it applies, I mean, actually, I don't know if I should, I feel it applies. I'm not going to isolate marriage. Yes, marriage for sure, but highly committed, long-term romantic relationships,
Yeah.
I would say also are in this category. The bedroom is the couple's playground.
Right.
Okay? Like, and if you think about the dynamics of how playgrounds work and like the different personalities and all this stuff, and sometimes you're in the mood to play, sometimes you're not in the mood to play, but that's the area that different things can happen. And I can't get too vulgar on here, but there's things that I say to my couples, like, yes, sometimes it is just sex.
Right.
Right. Sometimes there's days that it's just that.
Right.
And not dismissing anyone's feelings. All right. But okay, we still need to have sex.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's important, right? Because a marriage or a relationship without sex is a glorified friendship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while. Okay, I'm not feeling a certain way. Okay, I understand. And, something that's not talked about a lot either is, men also have psychological attachments to sex, right? So there are some dudes out there, no shame, that also need this stimulated, the brain stimulated before they can, get going. And that's completely fine, and but there are days that are just for sex. Other days are more for the intimacy, connection, things like that. All of it needs to exist. It can all exist, and it makes the sex life fun.
Right.
It's, let's just go at it because we feel like it. You know what I mean? And it's funny because when I talk to couples who have recently had children or have young children, they get really good at that. They get really good at like, mood or not mood, let's just go because the kids are asleep and we have 5 minutes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or we have 10 minutes. Like, let's just go. And they get really good at that, when they have a healthy sex life, right? And sex definitely needs to be talked about. There are way too many sexless marriages out there, but that could be a topic for another podcast. But yes, for the most part, a big part of intimacy is the foreplay that begins in the morning. The little messages, the communication, the admiration, the loving messages, the acceptance, the safety, right? The you're my person, everything's going to be okay. Not by saying those words, but by your actions, by the behavior that you model, right? All those things. And it's for both people.
Right.
So it can be very beautiful if you choose to look at it that way. That's why I always say that is the couple's playground. The bedroom goes untouched. That is the couple's playground, and it can be very, very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you approach couples that one really, okay, so for intimacy, it can be in different things.
Yeah.
It goes even back to like quality time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everyone's different with quality time. My quality time with Eddie is like phones off, like no phones, no distraction, just you and I, let's connect. Other people, it's like, sitting down watching TV. But what happens when you have a couple that one of them is like, likes the connecting and the talking and needs that for sex, and the other one's quality time is like, hey, if we're sitting down watching TV together, that's my quality time with you. I didn't know I had to like talk and all that stuff. How do you like?
We got to refer back to what we said earlier. What should be the automatic thought? How do we reframe?
What's for the relationship? Yeah.
And you go gauging it from there. For example, it's Wednesday. You had sex on Sunday and Monday. Hey, I am really tired. If we have not had sex this week, then I would say yes. But really, like if we, that's one thing. But like if it's been like a week, I mean, everybody just don't freak out.
Yeah.
All right,
if
don't
you're
freak
at
out.
home
Yeah,
now
don't
and
freak
you're
out.
like, oh my God, I haven't. Oh my God, what's going on?
Okay, the standard recommended amount is 3 times a week. I will let you know as a therapist with experience working with couples. Most couples do not achieve that. Okay. All right. So just throwing it out there. But if the standard is 3 times a week and we were, but like, okay, let's say that with our busy lives and everything, a married couple has sex once, twice a week. Okay. Like there's what's good for the relationship in that moment. Okay. It's been a week. You know what? Screw this television show. Let's do it. What's not diminishing feelings, right? Like not saying that, because people right now, as they're not right now, but whenever this airs, are listening to this and going, well, I can't just turn it on like that. Okay, we understand that,
right?
And we're not saying it's going to be like that all the time, but in a long-term, highly committed romantic relationship, there's got to be space for all of it. So, yes, there will also be moments where the buildup of the day. It should be like that most of the time.
Yeah.
But life takes over. That's a reality. So, and but it's very funny because, and I always nervously laugh when I'm working with couples and I have to drop that bomb. I'm like, well, the standard recommended amount is 3 times a week, and they're like, we're done. We're toast. And I'm like, no.
You're fine.
Like,
it's okay.
No. It's just like the BMI, like it hasn't been updated. You know what I mean? Like, not many people don't.
Yeah, you're okay.
Yeah, you're okay. I'm glad that joke landed.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Freaking BMI, man.
Oh my God, that BMI chart.
Yeah, I've dropped
Fuck that BMI chart.
I've dropped like 50 pounds. I'm still obese, man. What's going on here?
I had someone tell me, I went to the doctor the other day, and they told me I'm obese. And I'm like, please, first of all, find a different doctor. Yeah. Second of all, you're fine. BMI thing, like when was the last time that got...
I don't think anybody's looked. I think those people forgot it existed.
100%.
Yeah, man. So anyway, but it's all part of the journey and embracing the journey, right? So I think that's the main thing. And, if you're going to choose to be in a marriage or in a relationship, that's the focus, the relationship.
Yeah.
And we have to learn how to step out of self. And that's the hardest part. That is the hardest part.
I know someone who recently was like having issues, and I remember talking to them and asking them like, what's your biggest thing? Like what's your biggest issue right now that you're having? And they said communication and support. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by support? And they were like, I just need to know that I'm supported a lot more. Like I need to feel a lot more supportive. So it goes, I feel like that goes hand in hand a little bit with intimacy. It goes together.
Yeah.
And again, I'm only speaking from my experience because that's the only experience I have to speak on. But I'm very lucky that I'm with someone who is very like
a constant reminder of even oh my God, you're so beautiful, to a like, my God, you're so talented, to like, today I was leaving the house and he's like, well, you're going to go record a podcast. Like, you're such a badass. Like, those little things that I didn't realize that I thought were support also become very like an intimacy thing.
Oh yeah.
So what advice do you have for a couple or for people who are, yes, it goes back to the relationship and goes, but how do we listen more to our partners? Like, how do you listen more? We've talked about not being defensive. We talked about, okay, it has to do with the relationship. But how do you listen to like, oh, this is good for the relationship, and let me listen to it. Like, how, like,
I mean,
that's hard.
Like one of my favorite quotes, and I forgot who said it originally, but you know, life is simple, people are complicated, right? And it's like the answer is right in front of us. I want to learn more about this person that I love, so I need as much information as possible. So our logical brain would say, perfect, all you have to do is listen. What interferes with that?
Ego.
Okay. You know, I need this to be about me. I need this, or I'm going to bring it back around to me. Or instead of just saying, hey, there will be a moment for me. Let me just listen, and, it's funny because the band that I'm in is very improvisational. So we will do something new on the fly every show.
Oh my gosh.
And we did this really, really cool thing, which I won't get into details as to what it was, but we did this really cool thing where we ended up playing 2 songs at the same time in the same key. And the horn section was playing the riff of one song, but I was singing the chorus to the original song that I started with. And it was beautiful.
Oh,
and
how cool.
It was on the fly. People went absolutely crazy. I think it was our first standing ovation. Like, yeah, it was wild. So I know that the next day, I don't have the recordings yet because we record every show.
Right.
So I don't have the recordings yet. And I know that Lauren's like, here we go. Okay, explain to me again. I know, but she knows that that's what makes me happy. And I know that she's like, like, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. And she's like, I got to take the dogs out, or I got to,
Yeah.
But, and just like, with her things, I go, this is an investment. Me listening is me having information, because there's nothing better than, let's just say, hypothetically, she talks to me about a coworker, whether it's in the good or the bad, it doesn't matter. And I listen. And then one day she comes home and I'm like, hey, so how's so-and-so doing? They give you any trouble today? Oh, you listened, right? It's like, it's worth it. It's just so worth it. It's get as much information as possible.
Yeah.
Because like the saying goes, and I may have quoted this in the first episode, but there's a quote that says, if you give enough to people what they want, you will eventually get what you want. And not as a manipulative tactic. I mean, like, that person's going to want to listen to you too, because they know that you've listened to them.
Yeah.
And if there's a communication breakdown and in fact they don't react that way, you could say, hey, I don't know if you've noticed, but I do a pretty good job listening to you and I just don't feel it's reciprocated. Okay, nothing wrong with that conversation. But a lot of times we have instincts. We know, we're like, I should listen because this person listens to me too. And it's an investment. It's information. It's key. It's gold.
Yeah.
It's gold. This is great. And that should motivate us.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
One of Eddie's big things is, let's just take 5 minutes to connect.
Yeah.
Just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Tell me what you're going to do today, what's going to happen, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do, what's going to happen. But in just those 5 minutes in the morning of like connecting and just like touching base, now we feel kind of like in sync for the rest of the time. Because that's also like another thing that happens. Life gets chaotic. You have your own stuff going on. Your partner has their own stuff going on. Everything is busy. If you just take a second to connect about the smallest things. Hey, how was your day? Hey, how was this? Hey, how was that? That becomes something that you naturally do. And now there's never a day that passes that we don't connect. Even if it's
amazing.
Like, he called me now. And I'm like, hey, I'm recording the pod. Okay, call me after. Just wanted to connect. like that's our way of staying in sync. And I think, again, everyone's different.
Sure,
and
but
everyone
you found something,
and we found something. And I think that's important. And that's what we come back to at the end.
And if one day that has to change,
oh yeah,
you'd be willing to adjust to that.
Yeah.
And there'll be another form of connecting.
Right.
But connecting nonetheless.
Connecting nonetheless is like so important.
Love it.
Thank you for being on this pod.
Of course.
I want everyone to know that I think I'm gonna have you on every season.
Let's do it.
Every season. And just when I posted that you were gonna be on again, I got messages. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear what you guys are gonna talk about. I am telling you, it was you're such a great guest to have on here, and just being able to have conversations that sometimes can be uncomfortable with other people. And it's just, you bring this great energy and this non-judgmental kind of vibe. And it's great.
Well, a lot to be said about host as well.
Oh, thank you.
There's a vibe here that, creates that, what I mean? Because if it was a different type of vibe and I'm like,
what can I say? What can I not say?
Carlos, don't say that. Carlos, don't say that. So something to be said about that. So thank you. It really is an honor when you share that with me. And, feedback is always good, and you never know. You don't know who's saying what or what the perception is. So to hear that is flattering, and it helps. And
maybe we make this a thing, the relationship pod.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we come and we talk the real stuff that people go through, and it's okay. Relationships have different layers. You guys it has different seasons. Like we've gone through our seasons, and it's makes us even stronger. And it's like, I look back and I'm like, I'm so happy that happened and we got through that mountain. And now if another mountain comes and it's higher, guess what? We'll be able to climb it together.
That's right.
And I think relationships are not perfect, but you figure out what works for you.
And that there'll be perfection within that.
Yeah. Thanks for being on. We'll have you on soon, so don't worry.
All right. Can't wait to come back. All right.
That was so great.